Well, I am back with 3 more fantastic guests for you. We're going from the metaverse to outer space. So I'm particularly excited about this one. I grew up wanting to be an astronaut. I got distracted by political science. But however, I'd love to introduce to you, we've got 3 fantastic guests for you here. We've got Jane Pointer, founder and CEO of Space Perspective. We have Barbara Belvisi, the founder and CEO of Interstellar Lab. And we also have Hélène Ubi, who's the co-founder and CEO of the Exploration Company. So I'd love you, first of all, to tell me what you are doing. Just give us a brief overview of your work right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So before I do that, I would like to make a comment about this panel. So I have been in the space industry for 35 years. And it is quite unusual that there is more than me as a woman on the panel. And to have an entire panel of women and
let's
CEOs
give a round of applause.
is amazing. So, at Space Perspective, we have completely reimagined space travel so that we can take people to space gently, comfortably, to invite more people to have that quintessential astronaut experience of seeing Earth in space than ever before. Our spaceship Neptune doesn't use rockets, so there are no high G-forces, no training, none of that. It uses an enormous balloon to gently lift you up above the atmosphere, so you see that blackness of space, that iconic thin blue line, our incredible planet. We were talking about beauty earlier on a panel, the beauty of nature. I mean, you really see that and the singularity of this human family that inhabits spaceship Earth. And we are also a carbon neutral and a zero emissions way to get to space.
Excellent. I love the idea of going to space at the speed of a bicycle.
That's exactly right.
It's one of my favorite things. Hélène, tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, so we are building spaceships, basically. We are building our space vehicles like you would build cars. So we use the same architectures to go to stations around the Earth, stations on the Moon, and lunar surface, so that we can have economies of scales and also, let's say, improve our processes. We are the first in the world. I mean, it's very funny, we're speaking about women, but I think we also care a lot about the environment, because you said you are carbon neutral. We are the first in the world to use green propellant. So hydrogen peroxide for the capsule and biomethane for the lunar module. And the first in the world also to open source operating system. Because we're going to open a logistic ecosystem around the Earth to the Moon, where there'll be multiple players, players from various countries, players from various sizes, and we believe this interoperability is something that's going to be key. And as European players, we're also to be able to work with every players where they come from. And we believe that's also very important that this new space exploration trend and endeavor, which currently humanity is being built, we can find players which are truly cooperative. So we are logistic companies, basically, and the first in the world, actually, to be privately funded for this kind of vehicle.
Okay, interesting. And you've raised about 15 million, is that
Yeah,
right?
we are 1 year olds. We raised about 15 million, which is for a 1-year-old company is quite nice. And we're on the way to fundraise another 20 million. We've already some commitments.
Fantastic, excellent. So, Barbara, talk me through what you're doing.
So I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Interstellar Lab. We're focusing on protecting life on Earth and expanding it to space. So to do that, we've been developing inflatable structures that can be deployed under any environment, whether it's on Earth or in LEO or on the Moon. And inside those structures, we recreate perfect climatic conditions to grow plants. So we grow plants in a very efficient way, using less water, scrubbing CO2. So we also Space for Climate company. And yeah, we've been there for 4 years.
They're like pods, right? So
Yes.
one is slightly less than this stage.
Oh, it's much bigger than this stage.
It's much bigger than this
Yeah,
stage.
so it's actually from this wall to the other wall, and it's higher than this.
Okay.
Fully inflated. The first one that we built, we actually unveiled it 2 days ago in Paris.
Okay.
We recreated a tropical climate with growing 12 species inside, 3 endangered, and the rest used for food and for pharmaceutical purposes.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to hear more about that in a minute. But I'd love to hear a little bit about, now one connection that you guys have is this idea of the biosphere. And actually, Jane, you spent some time living in a biosphere, and the idea was to see about what it would be like when humans eventually did live on the moon, did live on Mars. What did you learn?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, let me give you some context of what we're talking about. So I was on the design team and then lived for 2 years and 20 minutes inside Biosphere 2. And Biosphere 2 was the first attempt for humanity to make a human-made biosphere. And so it was completely sealed at the time. The University of Arizona runs it now as a laboratory for understanding planet Earth. But at the time, it was completely sealed, as tight as the International Space Station. And we have a miniature rainforest, a savanna, an ocean, a marsh, a desert, and where we grew our food and where we lived. And so what did we learn? Gosh, so much. OK, so one of the things we learned is that it's possible. You can create a biosphere separate from Biosphere 1, our planet, and have it persist. We got a long way to go before we can actually take that to Mars and rely on it, but we certainly demonstrated it. Another thing we learned is that the human factor is a little tricky.
Is it? Give me an example.
Yes.
How is
it
it
turns out there's a whole series of studies called isolated confined environment psychology. And it's been studied in the Antarctic and on the International Space Station and with us. Yeah, it can get ugly. What can I say? 2 years with 8 people living together, not ideal.
But it also can result in some good relationships, right? I believe that your husband was there.
Yes. So I met my husband before that.
Okay. Fair
Part
enough.
of the biosphere training. But we did go into the biosphere. We were in there together. And actually, we've been on this long journey for over 30 years now. To take us all to space, so if I may just take a minute and just sort of describe one of the seminal experiences I had in there and why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So when I was in the biosphere, I knew moment by moment that the plants around me were giving me my oxygen, and as I exhaled, I was giving the CO2 to the plants that I was eating, and we were all turning orange because we were eating so many sweet potatoes, so we were becoming visibly part sweet potato. So, there was this real interconnection between us and our biosphere, and we could see the edges of our world, and it's a very deep connection. It becomes very personal what happens to your biosphere. And by extension, that's what astronauts experience when they go to space and they see our home planet from that vantage point. It becomes very personal what happens to our planet and the family that inhabits it. And that is why we want to take us all to space, so that other people can have that extraordinary experience and carry it home with them for the rest of their lives.
Interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about what life will be like when we start to use your spaceships to go, for example, to the moon, to Mars? Tell us how it's going to work. What's the next step in your journey with your spaceships?
Yeah, so in our journey, basically the next step is tomorrow. We are performing the final test of our first demonstrator. So a very important step for a one-year-old company. And afterwards, the second step is in 2024. We'll fly basically this capsule, so that's very small model. Basically, we'll demonstrate all the technology we need to demonstrate to be able to dock with stations.
What scale size?
This is very small scale. Of course, the size of the capsule would be round about a little bit bigger than this round here.
Okay.
It weighs 1.6 tons, and we carry with us 300 kilograms of clients. And it's already 100% pre-booked, so I'm sorry, I cannot offer any more rooms to fly
But it's cargo only to begin with.
We start with cargo because it's a bit, an approach is a little bit different, but I was the vice president of the European Service Module, so part of the RN vehicle that you can see on the top of the SLS launcher. And building, a spaceship that fly humans, if you look at how much time it took to SpaceX, how much time it took to China, it's round about 10 years, round about 1 to 2 billion. So we are starting with cargo because, as I was mentioning, we are the first company in the world to be privately funded for this kind of spaceship that go to stations and to the moon. So with cargo, it takes you 4 to 5 years, and you can have like quite fast a profitable business model. But we design with human in mind already, right? So we're going to fly here like living stuff. So when times come, either because Europe decides to go for human spaceflight, and then we can benefit, as SpaceX benefited from, huge NASA contract, we can benefit from huge European contracts, or when we IPO, then we'll go for humans. But we have that in mind already. And I think what would be special with flying with us, and the reason why we are already today 100% booked, is I'm insisting on the fact that we are European. So there is no other solution in Europe than us. And looking at the way exploration is going, and we, step by step, are in a dynamics which is more and more confrontational between China and the US. And it's part of, I would say, my roadmap. It's part of my duty to bring this European cooperation in the space exploration area. And flying with us means flying with green propellant, flying with open interfaces, and hopefully playing a role so that instead of having a Chinese space station, an American space station, we can hopefully inspire the world, building in space infrastructures and vehicles which are a bit more cooperative.
Interesting. And so you're going to be testing to low orbit.
Yeah, we start with low Earth orbit first.
Low Earth, and when's that?
So the first flight is next year, beginning of next year. Because now we finished the test, so we need to get some license to re-entry, but then, we fly next year. And then the second flight is in 24. So like it's moving pretty fast, actually.
Okay, that is pretty. And when would you like to be on the moon?
We'll be on the moon around 28.
Okay.
So it's kind of long. We need to develop a special engine for that. I told you we are building vehicles like cars. It means our vehicles can be reused, and they can be refueled, which is very important because it means that with one vehicle around the moon, you can do like 10 to 20 to 30 missions with the same vehicle. We're using the same propellant than SpaceX. And the concept of operations basically is to say SpaceX, the next vehicle of SpaceX, called the Starship, huge vehicle, going to be kind of the container ship for space exploration. But you look here on Earth, and it's great to have container ship, but you also need trucks, right? So on the moon, we want to be the truck which complement, the big Starship.
Got it.
And we'll start in 28 with the first vehicle that can be refueled, and that's going to go there by its own means, and then hop at lunar surface.
Interesting. So, Barbara, once we get with Helene to the moon by 28, we're going to need to grow some food. So I'd love you to talk me through the kinds of things that you're learning with your biospheres, with your pods, and how that's going to help humans thrive in space. Yeah.
If you think of long-term mission, one thing that is very important, and especially when you think about the moon and then Mars, is how do you support life of astronauts? And Biosphere 2 has been the first trial and test. There were visionaries, like honestly at the time, and inspired so much the work that we're doing at Interstellar. But so the work we do at Interstellar is really to learn how to grow plants in a very efficient way and to integrate our plant system with the existing life support. So life support is everything around monitoring the atmosphere, the oxygen and the CO2, and managing the watering system and how to reuse that. So the first step for us is obviously the Earth, because this is where we get our first customers for our advanced greenhouses. Second step is LEO. So we currently have one contract with NASA. We're in phase 2 right now. Prototyping is going to be assembled at the end of this year at Kennedy Space Center. And it's a cubic version of a biopod. It's just a combination of different cubes inside which we grow specific plants. So we're focusing on microgreens, mushroom, and insects.
And why those three?
Because NASA sent us a list of what they call the food gaps. So food gaps are nutrients that after a certain period of time in space, because of solar radiation, they degrade. So future of food in space is going to be a combination of lyophilized foods, but also plant grown. So you need growing system for those plants. So we selected the plants that can fulfill those food gaps, and we designed the hardware system to grow them. So testing end of this year, and up there in the ISS hopefully next year, so it's very fast. And then when it comes to the moon, we have a big contract with NASA, 5 years program to turn our terrestrial biopod into a lunar version of the biopod. So we can grow plant in the context of the Artemis program, providing food for the astronauts, but also research facility to grow specific plants in space.
And why is that?
Okay, so I'm going to make it simple, but so I'm going to generalize, but when you send plants in low gravity environments, the plant is stressed, so it will produce certain types of molecule. And those molecules then can be used in medicine or in cosmetics or pharmaceuticals. One of the first plants for our first flight we've been looking at is called Madagascar Wrinkle. So it's actually an endangered species in Madagascar that we're growing, and it's also used for the treatment of cancer. And we know that solar radiation triggers the production of those two molecules. So there's an opportunity to use space as a place to harvest, to farm specific plants that can, save life of people on Earth.
Fascinating. Well, we don't have to go all the way to the moon to experience space already. And I'd love you to tell us when I get into your space balloon, I mean, I've tried to book a ticket, but it looks like they're all booked out for the near future, right?
Oh, no, you can book a ticket. I'll help you.
Okay. All right, so I get into the space balloon, and I'm slowly rising at the speed of a bicycle. I think I can have a beverage.
You
Might be able to
may.
have a meal.
Yes, absolutely.
And
You
talk
may have
me
a
through the
beverage, a
experience.
meal, and of course, along with that, you need to have a toilet, restroom facilities. Oh, and by the way, this is going to be the best loo in the universe because it has the window. It has that huge window view.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We've thought of everything.
You thought of everything. Talk me through, because I think these balloons have already been used, right? So they've been
Yes.
used to bring satellites, I believe, into space, or telescopes.
Yeah, so it's actually really awesome. We get to take advantage of decades of flight that has been done by NASA, by ESA, but actually many members of my team have flown hundreds of these balloons, so over 1,000 of these balloons have been flown before, for research. Actually, my husband/co-founder's father is an astrophysicist, and he flew a giant gamma-ray astronomy telescope under one of these balloons in the 70s, was on the team that discovered that we have a black hole in the center of our Milky Way galaxy.
Amazing.
I know, right?
Yeah. So if I'm not a telescope, but I'm a person going in, what's the
Yes.
kind of experiences? You mentioned that idea of seeing the thin blue line. So I love this idea that being in space might actually help us appreciate life on Earth even more. Is that right?
Yeah, so what's actually fascinating is, so it absolutely gives you sort of this mind-expanding experience. And I can tell you from personal experience, from this kind of sort of really transformational moment, it doesn't just make you come back and go, oh my gosh, I'm never going to forget that. It makes you come back and go, oh wow, I have to do something. I have to do something about that. And when you look at what happens with astronauts when they go to space, they come back and they get more involved in social and environmental causes when they come back than before they left. So it
Why is
actually
that?
changes behavior.
But why is that?
Well, so I think it becomes very personal. So, I was a huge defender of Biosphere 2 because now it was my biosphere.
Right.
And when you go up and you see the Earth from that vantage point, it becomes your home. You still are, a citizen of America or England or Saudi Arabia or wherever, but you are now also a citizen of our planet, and that is our home in this vast ocean of the cosmos. And it's the only home we know.
So that's interesting, this idea that space actually might help us appreciate Earth as well. Tell us, Hélène, what your view is on this. How can going to space actually help life on Earth flourish even more?
Yeah, so I think it's very important actually to pass this message that space is really here at the service of the Earth, because we see very often in the media, when I'm speaking about space exploration, people are, okay, oh, this is so cool, but then, oh, but this is like a billionaire story, right? And so just taking a little bit of distance, right? Of course, we have like basic needs like positioning, like the communication, like gathering data from about the Earth, from space, so that we can better understand climate change and also optimize our activities on Earth, like helping farmers to use less fertilizers, for example, and less water. And many people, I think, forget that, how space is so critical to have a life which basically protect more the environment, and also simply bring knowledge to every people on Earth through connectivity. This is just giving to everyone the possibility, the potential to learn and then to express his or her talent. Space exploration, I think it's something different. It's, on the one hand, we are today, I think, at a technical turning point. Like, at the 16th century, humanity discovered how to build very solid ships, and because of that, we start crossing the oceans. Or the internet, right? Or the computer revolution. And like actually, the airplane revolution or the computer revolution, at the beginning, it was the wealthy people who were using these revolutions. And then, step by step, it democratized. And I remember in the beginning of the 80s, I was very, very small at that time, but like the CEO of a company called Digital Equipment, which was like bigger than IBM, right? Saying to everyone, but no, PC, it's not going to work. Everybody's got a PC right today. So I think space is going to happen, the same is going to happen. Because we are at a time when we know how to build spaceships, basically, which are going to democratize this access to space. Because they can be reused, they can be refueled, because we build them like cars, so we're going to industrialize the process, make it safer, make it basically more affordable. And the reason why we're going there is just because we are humans. And I think we have to embrace this beauty of the fact that when we discover new technologies, yes, we can use it for bad things, but we use it to discover because this is just who we are. And on top of that, while using this technology to go to space, space is a very, very difficult environment. You take lunar surface, it's minus 200 degrees during 14 days. How can you survive minus 200 degrees during 14 days? You have to develop technologies about energy storage. Even, I don't know how it's working in your ship, but if you go to Mars, it takes like 6 months. So you have to work about new technologies for recycling. And we're going to develop new technologies for like very, very frugal autonomous lunar landers, for example, lunar rovers, that are going to have a huge impact on Earth about very frugal autonomous cars. We're going to develop energy storage technologies, new recycling technologies too, and I just would like to finish with 2 examples. Most of the water purification membranes, which are today used on Earth, they come from the space station, because it was a necessity to recycle water for the astronauts. And today at space station, they are recycling the plastic bags of the food, transferring that into powder, and then with that powder creating repair pieces. So if we scale that on Earth, it can have a huge impact.
Why are we not doing that on Earth already?
So that, I don't know, but the point is, because space is hard, we have to come up with completely disruptive ideas that will have huge impact on recycling, energy storage, frugality, and autonomy on Earth. So on top of just expressing our human nature of exploring, I think this boomerang, the technological boomerang effect, is going to have a huge impact also on simply technologies we have to master so that we destroy less, basically, our climate on Earth.
Fascinating. So I think we've been given a few more minutes because we're so fascinating. So Barbara, you already have clients, right?
Yeah.
And is it because they're attracted to the idea that you're a space pod company, or is it because you can do something that actually they really need on Earth right now? It just happens to be something that will also be useful in space and on the moon and beyond.
They're actually buying our product because we are the only one providing such sustainable solution for farming. And coming back to going in space and looking at the Earth and applying space technology back on Earth, this is exactly what our company is about. But so talking about water and how do you save water in our system, it's a sealed bubble. Like the biosphere too, it's a sealed bubble. And so you plug it in, you put water, and we just recycle the water. We have a water treatment unit inside the pod. Also, we are the first greenhouse on Earth equipped with CO2 scrubbing technology. Isn't it silly? It's completely insane, but right now on Earth, there is no existing greenhouse that is equipped with CO2 scrubbing technology. It means that people
Why?
it's insane. It doesn't, it's really crazy because they're not sealed.
Right.
You need to be a sealed system, so it's efficient energy-wise to use a CO2 scrubber.
Okay.
But so our technology is scrubbing CO2 from the terrestrial atmosphere to boost the level of CO2 inside the greenhouse so we can accelerate photosynthesis. And this is actually coming from, a space station and designing a lunar station. How do you scrub CO2 from the human and give that to the plant? And so we're providing a very, very efficient solution on Earth. And it's because we started with the design of a lunar station that needs to be very efficient when it comes to energy, to resources, and then we did the terrestrial design. I just want to add something, and I agree on what you girls said. Yay, space girls. Space CEOs. Yay. But no, it's space as something that is very powerful. It's the only industry that is able to gather so many countries and showing collaboration, providing so much hope for a beautiful future. But I think it's important we have women actually leading space companies because we want to bring something else. This is not about the space race and who's going to be the first one to put a flag on the moon. This is about inspiring humanity that the future is going to be bright and full of life, and that space is helping us to reflect on what's going on our planet. So if we go out there, is actually to come back and to help building a better world. Because there is no multiplanetary species plan without the Earth. So voilà.
We have no planet B.
No, not yet.
So, but one of the things I think you mentioned to me before is that you're growing things like vanilla that come from places normally like Madagascar, but you're able to grow these in France, is that right? Where you normally could not.
Yep.
And what does that mean for sustainability or for products or for what we might be able to achieve?
So this example more specifically is towards the cosmetic industry and also the food industry. So we relocalize part of the production. So we are reducing CO2 emission and also the land footprint. Because we developed systems that are not touching the soil. And so we can really use less space, give more space back to wilderness on Earth, so we can preserve biodiversity and produce what you need locally in a more sustainable way. So
It's fascinating. If you had unlimited resources today,
Right.
what's the first thing you'd do?
With regards to what? That's a gigantically open question.
You could retire, or you could
I
keep
don't
building.
think so.
All
I
right.
don't think that's in any of our makeup.
So what would you do with regards to your company?
Oh, with regards to my company. Well, of course, I would accelerate things dramatically. I would have us go instantly building these systems around the world. We would start to lower the price so that we can get more and more people into space, because it's about numbers, right? Let's get more and more people there. And then if I seriously had unlimited resources, so I would partner up with these two wonderful women because we're all about experience. We're all about, at Space Perspective, we put the human at the center of our design, at the experience, and there's a lot of work going on in our technologies for going to space. There's not nearly enough work going on in the human component of making it not just so that we survive on other planets and in space, but that we thrive there, and that we take that thriving and bring it back to Earth. That's what I would do.
I mean, it does sound, it's pretty tough. I mean, it sounds super exciting to be in space. But every time I really think about it, it sounds like camping with a really hardcore
but that's what it can be,
on,
right? So with otherwise, who on earth is going to want to go live there?
Right.
So with Space Perspective, okay, so we've reimagined how you go to space, so it's this gentle experience, but we've also completely reimagined the experience inside. This isn't some stark, white, very utilitarian interior of this capsule, which has its place. There's a reason for that. But in our capsule, it's a space lounge.
Right.
Which gets across the idea that this is a human endeavor. And we're taking people to space to have a shared experience. This isn't the right stuff. This is all of us going to live there. And when I say thrive, I mean thrive. And that means as a community of people going to the moon, other places in our solar system.
What is your track for how many balloons will be in what parts of the world when?
So right now, unlimited resources aside, we are planning to have we're getting back into test flights early next year. We're going to be having our first crewed flight around the end of 23. We'll be getting into commercial flights around the end of 24. And then we'll very quickly be expanding around the world. And of course, building a fleet of spaceships as well as ships, because we're also a marine operation.
Got it. Okay, we might come back to that. Let's see how we go. Unlimited resources, Hélène.
Yeah. So we are currently building, I would say, one part of the transportation system. So if I would have unlimited resources, I would build the whole transport system, including the infrastructure, so the station. I mean, you see now very, very interesting concept of stations, enabled basically by the next volume of Starship. And also like trying to provide also with artificial gravity. So I would go for basically for the whole transportation infrastructure and the final destination, because I think there is a lot of synergies in terms of technologies. And what I'm doing now is on every spaceship we fly. So it starts. With this one in 24, because the one in 23 is really like too small. I'm giving 1 to 3% of non-profit. So we're going to fly, for example, with children, with transceivers coded by children in 24, where children from everywhere from the world, they'll send messages to other children from everywhere from the world.
Amazing.
And if I would have unlimited resources, I also would like to use this infrastructure to contribute to inspire, to pass this message that at the end we are just one Earth, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that just because we are flying around the Earth, or we're going there, and coming back, we can pass the message. We can create, I would say, this connection. Through the next generation of explorers.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
very
we're doing
briefly,
a similar thing.
Very briefly, unlimited resources. What would you do first?
Okay, I put I'm going to design several versions of biopod, and then we put a lot on Earth to grow endangered species. More specifically, I think we go to the Amazon and we grow the plants and then we replant them. Our goal as a company is to build the largest library, the catalog of species. So we're not doing the Noé Ark. I got that often, but there is a little bit of that behind. But yeah, install a lot of biopods, bring life to other planets, and help the new generation build more and more companies to protect the life we have here and bringing there. So
fantastic. Well, thank you, all three of you, very much. And can our crowd give us our space women a big round of applause?